because I don't believe that a light-skinned brown hijabi girl is less privileged or on the same level as a dark-skinned black female. That just doesn't make any sense to me. There are far more stereotypes when it comes to a dark-skinned black female, whether it's seen as a prostitute in some parts of Europe, whether it's the angry black stereotype, whether it's the thief. Like, we can go on and on and on. Like, not that it's a competition, and not that we should be looking at it as a competition, not that I'm trying to do that, or not that the discussion was based on that, but at the end of the day, dark-skinned black females are subjugated to more forms of racism and are less privileged than a fair-skinned brown hijabi girl. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. The fact that people can even perceive that notion, it's ridiculous. Irrespective of if you're wearing a headscarf or not, if you are a lighter skin color, you are more privileged than a dark-skinned black female. And the whole notion that we believe that black people can't use certain words, what form of entitlement and privilege are you swimming in to even believe that you can tell a community that you are not even part of what they can and cannot use? Yes, you can discuss it in a debate, but to even have that core belief is a form of privilege that you feel like you should acknowledge. A debate was had, and many people came to the conclusion that brown girls that wear hijabs are on the same level or less privileged than dark-skinned black females. And we need to get into this conversation. Hey guys, it's Murad Morali. Yes, I took the glasses off because we're about to go in. Hey guys, it's Murad Morali. Hopefully you guys are doing well today. So we have this conversation, this debate that I had last evening with some family members. It was obviously me against 3 family members, and we were discussing this conversation. And the reason why I'm talking about this, because I do want to bring this to the forefront of, the public opinion. The general notion that came about was that a plethora of my family members believed that a brown-skinned hijabi Muslim girl is less privileged or more so on the same level than a dark-skinned black female, which I had to disagree on a massive amount. Like, it simply seemed incomparable to me. It made no sense to me, because at the end of the day, a brown-skinned woman is lighter than a dark-skinned black female. Therefore, when it comes to the notion of colorism, when it comes to the notion of racism, when it comes to the notion of institutional, environmental forms of racism, media racism, dating world racism, dark-skinned black females are subjugated to more of that than anybody else on this planet. That was my main point, that nobody else is. Irrespective of personal situations, personal experiences that you have gone through, i.e. my cousin, he was referring that she had gone through experiences as a hijabi person in the institutional workforce place where she felt that her black female colleague was treated better than her, i.e. she was able to go out to drinks, or she wasn't seen as somebody a bit conservative because obviously of a headscarf, or the whole issue of Islamophobia. There are plenty of issues. Well, I certainly wasn't disagreeing on the notion that just because you're wearing a headscarf that life cannot be more difficult, or that there aren't more hurdles to go through. As just mentioned, Islamophobia, you may be seen as conservative, it might be hard for you to socialize, you're obviously judged as well, like everybody judges this world anyways, but you obviously judge, it's harder to socialize, hard to go out to like a place where people are drinking, XYZ, and therefore she expressed that because her dark black female is able to do this and able to do XYZ, and therefore she is more privileged in a workplace environment than her, just because of her personal anecdotal evidence and experience, which I had to still completely disagree, because I feel like it is ridiculous to believe that just because of a certain situation that you have had, which no one can take away from you, that you can come to the general conclusive statement that brown-skinned hijabi girls are less privileged than a dark-skinned black female. I'm not talking about light-skinned black female, I'm talking about a dark-skinned black female. It didn't make any sense to me, because I feel like when it comes to the colorism and notion, the more lighter you are, the easier of a life that you could live, because obviously everything is based and coated on white supremacy, which is something that we all agreed on, that something is based on white supremacy. So that didn't make any sense to me at all. So obviously I asked a few friends, and I wanted to get their point of view on it, because I felt like it was very interesting. So I'm going to bring that to the forefront now as well, and come to those conversations. And I really want to hear your comments down below. Lead on to another part of the topic, where a lot of my family members reflected on the notion and the idea that black people should not be saying the N-word, that they are ridiculous for saying the N-word, that it's stupid, that because people are going to be saying it who aren't black, and they shouldn't be saying it, and the word should be said by nobody. So what I said to this, because it really was 3 to 4 against 1, nothing personal, just a debate, it is what it is. Sometimes you get that 4 against 1, it's like. So what I had said to the debate was, it is an entitlement, it is a privilege for you to even believe as a non-black person to be telling black people what they can and cannot say, because you simply cannot go up to black people or even have the core belief to believe that certain communities should not be saying words to each other when you're not even part of that community anyways, number one. And number two, it is simply word reclamation. You have reclaimed a word, you have adopted the word that was used with a lot of derogatory, and you have adopted it and used it as something positive amongst these particular communities and race. And this was something that I was completely shut off by. It didn't make any sense to them. They simply said, if it's a word, nobody should be using it, point blank, period. And it is not for us to say whether people can use a word or not, because we are not part of that community and race. And by you even having that core belief to believe that you can tell people what they can or cannot say is an entitlement of your privilege that you have as a non-black person, that you are just simply completely missing, and it's going right past your head. For them to say, oh, black people should not be using the N-word, but like, what position are you in to tell people what they can or cannot use? That in itself is a form of further suppression. Like, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense to me. Whether that people may be using that word now in a derogatory way who are not black because the songs they're listening to and so forth, just do not say the word. And if a young kid's saying it, they are a young kid. They should be educated. It's not that hard to understand. A word has been reclaimed and used. No one has gone through anything worse in this entire life than a black person in terms of their ancestors when it comes to slavery, when it comes to present day racism now. Yes, Islamophobia is on the rise. Yes, it is a massive issue, especially for hijabi girls more than anybody, and I'm privileged again as a male man. I'm privileged in my culture as a male man. I'm privileged because I have to wear a headscarf or I don't look Muslim, XYZ. These are all privileges that one has to look at and accept and so forth. But at the end of the day, Islamophobia is on the rise, but colorism and racism is far more prevalent and stronger. And if you are dark skinned female, you are less privileged than a lighter skinned hijabi person. Like, how can you not see that? It doesn't make any sense to me. I really don't understand how someone cannot see that. That in itself is a form of ignorance, because you are not even tuning in to the privilege that you have as a person. It just doesn't make any sense. Because of a certain situation that you've had at work where particular people who are black females have had it easier than you, because they're able to socialize, because they're able to go drink and mingle and so forth, and because you know certain people X, Y, Z, whatever, you now have come to the conclusion, a general conclusion, because nobody can take away your personal experiences from you, definitely, but you're coming to a general conclusion that you don't see yourself as more privileged than a dark-skinned black female because of a headscarf that you are wearing. Like, that in itself is just crazy to me. Of course, a headscarf has barriers, which we've discussed, but look at a general perspective and notion. The main argument they also were discussing were that you need to look at it as a case-by-case basis. Not that the world goes by case-by-case basis, but even having the notion that we should be looking at it at a case-by-case basis is a brown skin privileged attitude notion. Like, it doesn't make any sense. The world doesn't look at things like case-by-case basis. Just because you're comparing it from your friend at work, a dark-skinned black female, who obviously, you're saying is a bit more easier with life and everything, as opposed to her, because she's wearing a headscarf and she isn't, therefore it's easier for her. Not that wearing a headscarf is hard, no one's denying that. It is very difficult, especially in the current climate today. That doesn't negate or lead to the conclusion that this dark-skinned black female is more privileged than you, because that clearly isn't true, because her skin is far more darker. And if you're talking about the correlation of white supremacy and colorism and racism, the darker your skin color is, the harder life is in general. So, and by even saying that, you are therefore subjugating and even marginalizing what a dark-skinned black female can go through in the institutional workforce. And if you were to look at it and to compare case-by-case basis, the majority would outweigh this particular case in terms of the fact that dark-skinned black females would go through far worse. We also came with a certain example where if there was a dark-skinned black female and a brown-skinned hijabi girl with a headscarf, and they're both being interviewed, they came to the conclusion that the dark-skinned person would be hired more so than the fair-skinned girl with a hijab because of the hijab. And that in itself is again something that I had to disagree with. It made no sense to me, because at the end of the day, this particular person is fair-skinned, is very light, her skin color that is a major more factor than anything else. It definitely is. So I spoke to one of my friends. Do you think brown Muslim hijabi girls are overall more privileged than dark-skinned black females? He said to me, yes. In terms of sexual racism, yes. In terms of employment and stereotypes, yes. Black women are often made out to be the perpetrators. An example is an angry black woman stereotype, which is obviously what I was referring to. Then I spoke to my other friend, who is a brown, fair-skinned, hijabi person, just to gain even more in-depth analysis from a particular person, since everybody wants to talk about case-by-case basis. Let's begin asking people. And I spoke to this particular person. She goes to say, we can only see things through our own eyes, but I've been out and about with black girls and seen how much insane, racist, microaggressions they deal with that I really don't. It's not for us to say, and she said, yep, even as a hijabi, especially a light-skinned makeup wearing hijabi. So she's been out with particular people, and as a light-skinned makeup wearing hijabi, you know, you're obviously with your black friends and they are dealing with microaggressions that this person does not particularly deal with. Now, just because he's wearing a hijab and it does not, why by one saying this, one isn't obviously reflecting that because you're wearing hijab, life is just the same as somebody who's not wearing hijab. Obviously, you know, there are certain issues that come with that, but irrespective of where you're, if you're wearing a headscarf, you should be able to understand that because your skin is far lighter and you are far more fair-skinned, that you are more privileged than a dark-skinned black female, because that is how this world has worked. That is how the system has worked. It just is entirely hypocritical to even believe in the notion of white supremacy, which my family members were agreeing with, but then denying the fact that just because you are a lighter skinned person than a dark black female, that you're not more privileged than her because of a headscarf that you're wearing. A headscarf that you're wearing does come with a lot of baggage, yes, but it doesn't change the fact that you are more privileged than a dark skinned black female because of your skin colour. Like, it's just no difference in a white man denying the fact that he has white privilege. There's just no difference. The whole notion of, you know, our grandparents and, you know, our aunties or uncles always saying to us, don't go down Brixton, because obviously Brixton's over area, go down Clapham because Brixton's over area with black people and everything, which is obviously rooted in their experiences of what they have gone through and the riots and everything that's happened. So that in itself is a form of anti-blackness embedded in cultures based on experiences, based on a white supremacy world. What they were failing to understand is the root of the issue. Why did the riots happen? What was going on? What was the suppression going on? Why was this all happening to these particular communities? To then also you know, because of white supremacy, because of racism that's going on, and people were obviously uproaring to it, and then these people who are uproaring to it are getting backlash furthermore by a lot of people. So again, it made no sense to me. And then there was the notion that, you know, it's these people who are in gangs and everything, it's harder with them they should get out of these communities. A lot of people are born in these communities. A lot of people are viewed to be in these hard gangs and communities. It's far more difficult for them than a brown person who's in a gang to get out of that because of the shades of skin color. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. There are so many forms of privilege that people have, whether it be age privilege, beauty privilege, or whether it be, you know, male privilege, female privilege, whatever. That was all discussed and agreed on, but at the same time, I just could not fathom the understanding that my light-skinned brown hijabi cousin is not able to see that she is more privileged than a dark-skinned black female, simply because she is tailoring it to a anecdotal personal experience or a friend's experience or another friend's experience. Like, I haven't been through certain situations where black people are more privileged than me or whatever, pertaining to a certain environment with certain variables and cofactors, but even then I'm still able to see that I'm more privileged than a black person simply because of the colour of my skin. I'm more lighter. Child, I'm light. I'm a light-skinned person. That itself is an issue because we're tailored to a white supremacy world. The more lighter you are, the more easier your life can be. It doesn't necessarily mean that your life is going to be easy. Of course, everybody has their trials and tribulations, but at the end of the damn day, because you have a lighter skin color, there's more of a chance that your life can be easier than a dark-skinned person. Like, how can you come to the conclusion that you can agree to the notion of white supremacy, but then also disagree with the fact that because you are a person wearing a headscarf, that it's impossible for you to be more privileged than a dark-skinned black female? It made no sense. And if you want to bring up institutional stuff, and if you want to bring up facts and statistics, there is a plethora of stuff which I've obviously spoken about in my previous videos, but there was one that was very interesting to me, where black people in the UK are 21 times more likely to have university applications investigated. This shocking practice highlights just how pervasive institutional racism is across the higher education sector. Now, does that mean that brown people don't face racism? Does that mean that there's obviously no form of racism for other minorities? Absolutely hell to the damn no. Nobody's marginalizing or repressing or suppressing that. But at the end of the day, you have to acknowledge and understand that black people would get it far worse than you. If you're not able to understand that, you are bypassing the privilege that you have as a non-black person. It is what it is. You aren't going through stuff on your road and your life is dandy as hell and you're feeling no racism but no one's saying that. But black people get it far worse. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. This literally was a 4 against 1 debate. Like, I was just, you know, sticking up for myself. It is what it is. Sometimes you got to do that in debates. It's always going to be 1 against many, or, you know, a few against a few, whatever. That's how debates work. It's natural, it's healthy, it is what it is. It can be quite intense. But I did want to bring this to the forefront because we all agree that maybe I should talk about this on YouTube to see what everybody else is saying. You don't need to walk through somebody's shoes to know what struggles they go through on a visibility basis. And the key word visibility, because we don't know what people are going through behind this, but from a visibility basis, you can see that you can acknowledge privilege that you've gone through, and you can acknowledge that there's a lot of people go through stuff. I don't need to be a black female to know that black females get it the worst. You just need to listen and think and do your research. Stand by the notion that a brown, fair-skinned hijabi girl is definitely 110% more privileged than a dark-skinned black female, 110%. How many dark black females have been married into the family that I'm part of? I'll wait, because I simply can't be seeing any. So that in itself is another direct form example. Well, obviously, the girls or guys who have been married into certain the family are also attributed more so to white reflections of beauty, Eurocentric forms of beauty, as opposed to Afrocentric forms of beauty. Like, it doesn't make that in itself is another direct example of deep embedded anti-blackness. But then again, if it's so subconscious that people aren't able to see it, you have to just wait in life until they're able to see it for themselves, because clearly some people are so ignorant that they just can't see what they're talking about. It just doesn't, I don't know, they just baffled my mind when a light-skinned brown hijabi girl said that she doesn't see herself to be more privileged than a dark-skinned black female. Like, the colorism, the racism that's high-key ongoing, the stereotypes that are far more. Yes, Islamophobia is on the rise, and yes, if you're a hijabi girl, life is very difficult for you, 110%, whether it's you being judged, whether you be in workplace forms. Like, I totally understand. I don't totally understand, obviously, because I don't wear a hijab myself, but I'm able to understand that there are a lot of issues, and it's very high-key hard and very difficult for a person to even maintain a hijab, let alone wearing it and struggling with it. Of course, 110%, nobody is denying that or marginalizing that or suppressing that. That is definitely exists, and it's definitely very, very true. But at the end of the day, if you were to put them on the same level, there is no same level, because a fair-skinned hijabi makeup wearing girl is going to be more privileged than a dark-skinned black female, because if the dark-skinned black female was also wearing hijab, both of them, who's more likely to get a job, to be accepted into the dating world, to the media world, with all these Middle Eastern bloggers who are wearing hijabs and everything? You don't really see the dark-skinned black females. Irrespective of every single notion of world that you're applying it to, the fair-skinned, light brown hijabi girl is going to be accepted more so than the dark-skinned black female hijabi girl, because this person is more attributed to Eurocentric forms of beauty, to white supremacy, because she has a far lighter skin than dark-skinned black female, which is reflected to Afrocentric forms of beauty and XYZ. How you cannot see that is literally just so confusing that it's just like, oh, how ignorant can one be? I don't understand. It's just confusing as hell. Anyways, hit me up on my Instagram and my YouTube. Get into this. I'm very interested to read your comments. This may be a long-ass debate, so apologies. But thank you guys, and I'll definitely catch you guys soon.